Hi, everyone. It's always so lovely to see you again. And for some of us, it's a year in between visits. Katy, Jules, Michele, it's been a year since I saw you, but Ellie and Susan, I've just met recently. They're two of my most recent guests. I'm so glad that they thought it would be fun to join us. And I really like to cross-pollinate. I mean, I really love for you all to meet one another because we're all doing such different things. So I guess I want to see what everybody's working on so busily. So why don't we start with that? It seems like everybody has a project they're working on. So let's do that and then we'll share our drinks. So first round, Jules, why don't you take it away? No, but you want to come off mute so you can talk to us, right?
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So this is a little jacket for a baby from Stitchcraft, October 1956. Here's show the picture from the magazine, how it will look when it's done. It has a little sort of waffle pattern in blue and white, very pretty, for my colleague who's having a baby in January. Here it is, a hooded pram coat. That's what it's going to look like when it's done, hopefully. So yeah, I'm not making it the way it says to in the pattern, because of course they're supposed to make it in pieces and then sew it all together, but I wanted to save time, and has raglan arms, so I just made the fronts and back in one piece and the sleeves separately, and now I'm doing the yoke all in one.
Yay. I was born around that time. So
did you wear something like this?
I probably did.
I
remember I had actually like sort of a third set of grandparents, because my father, when he was just out of school, rented a room in someone's house, and those two people were like elderly, old enough to be his parents, and they became like extended family to me. So I just knew them as like, you know, an extra grandmother and grandfather. The woman was an ace knitter, and my own grandmothers weren't knitting for me, but she was. And I remember a couple of things. There was a little red sweater with a hood, and there was something that was white with little like pink and blue speckles. I don't exactly remember, but it was exactly around that time, 56. So she might have been knitting from that very book.
Wow.
Is Stitchcraft British?
Yes.
Oh, so
probably. But it was available. It was available in, I think, pretty much all English-speaking countries. I don't know. It was definitely published in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. I think maybe also in the US, but definitely in Canada. So someone might have had a Stitchcraft in the US in 1956.
Okay, well, thanks, Jules. Let's move on to Katy. Let's see what you're working on.
Oh, hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. I'm working on a sweater. The pattern is from 1918. Yeah, have a look if I can show it. It has a nice little collar in the back. And as it is usual for the time, it starts, you knit everything in one piece, start at the back, at the sleeves at some point, and only the collar is attached in addition. The rest is one piece.
It's great. It's like I could imagine my grandmother wearing that. Wow, lovely. Thanks. Ellie?
I'm knitting on a pattern that's 2 years old because it's mine. So.
Oh, wait, I know what it is.
Literally just cost this one. So I don't know what gave me the idea, but I made a Christmas jumper / cardigan a couple of years ago, and it somehow has become very popular. Apparently there weren't that many, you know, kind of new on Ravelry kind of Christmas pullovers and cardigans, and so yeah, that seems to have taken off. And I saw some people have knitted in these colors. I was like, well, I guess I need to have another one of these cardigans. So the difference here between the one that I have and this one is that I made one with this sort of chart all over. So there's like, for every repeat, there's like different motifs, like Christmassy kind of stuff. But I'm going to do this one, the rest of this, just gray. This is all the color work that will be on it. And it has a steek that I'm going to cut up and then put button bands on, and that's that, basically. Yeah.
So it's the reverse of the one that you showed me the other day, which was
Yeah.
red with gray, is it?
I've sadly put that one away for now, but yeah.
No, it's okay. It's interesting if you can, use the
That
same
was
ones.
that was a red pullover version with the pattern all the sleeves, everything, with
It's so
gray
great.
patterning. And this is the opposite color scheme, but also with just the plain stuck in for the sleeves and the body. And it's a cardigan.
Okay, Michele, take it away. Thanks, Ellie.
Right, so what I'm most in progress project at the moment, it's funny because I had the yarn and I had the pattern in a book, but the actual decision to make this sweater was based on buying these buttons and a buckle from eBay. So I got six little buttons and a buckle. So I thought, well, what do I knit with this? So I had something that needed 6 buttons and a buckle. So I looked through all my projects and my books and everything, and it just had to be, although I think it's only got 4 buttons, but the original's got 6. The Susan Crawford book with that stripy design. And what I'm going to do is actually knit the belt so that it matches. So yeah, so the colourings, although it was described as pink, well, it's more like a salmon pink. So I've already got a bag of pieces, so I've literally got, because it's quite a sort of construction, I've got all my pieces in there, and all I need to knit now is the second cuff. So yeah, it's going to be fun knitting this all together, to be honest, but that's the most important part, because if it doesn't go very well, then it's going to look a bit naff. So yeah, so I've got one more cuff and the collar, and then it's start sewing up time. So yeah, I'm kind of not looking forward to that, because I've got to be really careful and accurate that it looks okay. So yeah, so that's that one.
The color is really pretty. I love that.
Yeah, it's funny because I had this yarn on my shelf for ages. So it kind of, when I received the buttons, I thought, well, what colours do I use? And the pink, it was too sort of salmony to go with a proper pink. So the salmon, even though it's lighter than the salmon, I just thought, just has to be those colours. And I do like bright, as you know.
Good, thank you. Susan. While Susan's coming off of mute, I just wanted to mention, I was hoping Sophie would be able to join us, but she told me she's 7 months pregnant and it's evening where she is in the UK. So she wasn't sure how much energy she would have. And I'm missing her a lot, but I'm wishing her the very best with the rest of her pregnancy and through the holiday season and all of that. So, okay, Susan, sorry.
Okay. Well, maybe a couple things that would interest you, but I'm going to pause in a minute to dig out something that I think you would find interesting that was knitted by my grandmother, and something else knitted by me that ended up being a part of my research. So I'll do that. But right now, what I brought with me is a stitching project. I've been taking a knitting break lately. My grandma was a quilter, and I had a box, but she passed away before she finished everything, because she liked to start but not necessarily finish it all. And I had joined a group here called Loose Ends Finishers. It's a not-for-profit that connects people who have such projects where someone has died or is disabled, cannot finish it, and they connect it with volunteers who will finish for them. Well, I hadn't been assigned anything, so I decided to do one of my own loose ends, and it was a box of these hexagon quilts. It's called Grandmother's Flower Garden, and there was a whole box of these, 78 of these, and little piles of these little things, and she had put together some of these with these around them, some of them. So she had put together all of these things, all of these. So I'm about halfway finished stitching these together all by hand. And it's something that I would never do, but it's beautiful. It's turning out to be just beautiful. So it's all, here's where I am so far. Every single flower pattern is different. Each one is unique. They're in shades of lavender, blue, kind of pink to red, and something else, green. So I did a chart. I think I have that here so that I could lay out the colors and be sure and combine them, so I don't end up with like a whole blue corner or something. So my taste is very kind of Scandinavian. So this is totally out of whack for me. But that's what I brought. That's what I've been stitching on lately, because every stitch is a pleasure. I am channeling this grandma as I finish this.
Wonderful.
It is a wonderful project. I did put it up on Facebook, and there seemed to be quite a bit of interest in how it progressed. And so I'm getting ready to do another one now, another photo now that I'm halfway through, and I'm hand quilting all of this. It's a little unusual. Usually with paper piecing, it's done a different way, but she stitched it all by hand. So I'm stitching it all by hand, and I'll quilt it by hand once I finish it as well.
I was going to say, I'm personally not a quilter, but I'm always interested in other handicrafts. So I had read about this paper piecing and how people cut these shapes, and they can't really do it on the machine because there are too many intersections. There's too many opportunities for things to not line up exactly. You know, it has to be like super accurate, or it's a mess. So
indeed. Well, I do.
Isn't it French? Isn't it a French technique? Am I imagining that?
No, it's English paper piecing.
English.
It's called English paper piecing. I know how to do that, and ordinarily this would be done where you actually have the paper pieces and then you connect them. I'm using a running stitch and a little seam, but that actually uses a connecting, like a whip stitch back and forth, and then you take the paper out. And I know how to do that, but this is how she started it, so that's how I'm going to finish it. And I'm
wonderful.
Feeling kind of thrilled to do it. I've had this box of pieces for 30 years. She started this in 1969. And the really moving part about this was that when I opened the box again, and I've moved it with me 3 different places, but when I opened the box again, started looking at it, she had stitched together 2 of these large hexagons, and the needle with her thread was stuck right in there where she left it.
No.
However many years that is ago. I know, it's been very, it's important. And so I'm a bit obsessed with that. But let me bring something that I think would interest you. I think I'll just pause for a minute while I pull that out, but it's knitted. So if I may.
Okay, I can pause everything.
Oh, no, I'll just leave for a minute.
Okay.
Right here.
All right, maybe while we're waiting for her, I have a magic trick that I'm going to do for everybody. Can you see my glass that I'm holding? No, right? Okay. Sleight of hand. So yesterday, out in a public plaza in Manhattan, there was this pop-up thing, and they were handing out these cans of something called Poppy, and the people who were giving them out were wearing these hot pink parkas. They were so cute. I think this is going to be pink, and there's also this one, raspberry rose and cranberry fizz. So I'm going to open one of these. I guess I should get my knitting out of the way in case it splashes. And then I think that you should be able to suddenly see my glass appear. I don't know, this is a sort of a funny thing. It's there, but it's not there. I'm holding it in my hand. Okay, Ellie, Miss Technology Whiz, how do I?
No idea.
Close to the camera. Sort of, sometimes. Okay, if I keep it in front of me, but then if I go like this, it vanishes. Chin chin, everyone. Happy holidays. Guess we should wait for Susan.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to hear about everybody's drinks.
A bottle of water.
Okay, this is interesting. It tastes medicinal. But it has some, it's supposed to be, I think. It's called prebiotic soda. It's supposed to be healthy for your gut. 'Tis the season to treat yourself to this limited edition seasonal flavor, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. There's something about this that it's supposed to be good for you. But, you know, when it's good for you, it never tastes good. But it looks pretty. It does look pretty. Speaking of grandmas, this was my grandmother's glass. You can see the etched little berries, maybe. I don't know if you can see it. Michele, your drink looks so exotic. What are you drinking?
Blue Hawaiian. Stephen's into making cocktails because we've got a tiki bar now out in the garden. He's become this cocktail extraordinaire bartender. So every weekend now we have to have a cocktail. We didn't have one yesterday, so we saved it up for today.
This is why she knits for him. He's knit worthy because he makes good cocktails. Hi, Stephen. I'm sure you're
really
good.
His presentation skills are really good, so you know you can't. We had one barbecue this summer, and he was the host, like doing all the barbecue food and all the cocktails. He even had the menu, printed out a menu for everyone, and so everyone had a different cocktail. Yeah, he's really into the cocktail thing now, the tiki bar. So come next summer, then who knows? I might actually do a podcast out in the garden by the tiki bar. That would be really good. Roll on next summer.
He has to do a yarn themed, a wool themed, maybe sheep or lamb or something themed cocktail. Give him that challenge. Ellie, just water for you?
Yeah.
Okay, that can't be healthier than that. Katy, are you drinking something fun?
Some tea, which is called Winter Dream.
And it's pretty color.
Nice.
Yeah, it's also like a pinkish color, right? Yeah. Well, bottoms up. Jules?
I've also got very healthy tea. I've got sandalwood yogi tea. So
we have yogi tea here. It has fortunes on the little tea bags.
Oh, right. Yes, I already put the tea bag away, but I can go get it and see what wise saying it has on it. Just a moment.
Please. Okay, Susan, we waited for you.
Found this. So my grandmother, who first showed me how to knit when I was about 8, was from Denmark, and she was a masterful knitter. And she made this little snowsuit for me when I was a toddler. And if I hold it up closely, you can see beautiful knitting. So that's the jacket. And then these are the little trousers that go with it. And look at these sweet little stirrup feet. Isn't that cute?
Too cute for words.
Isn't that wonderful? So I started asking some years ago, as you know, I write a lot for Piecework magazine. And I just started asking, why did people put kids in snowsuits and send them outside? What a weird thing to do. It happened around 1920-ish. And I found this pattern. I just started noticing piecework patterns. And one I noticed was called the Baby Bunting Snowsuit. And it was in Fleischer's Knitting and Crocheting Manual, 17th edition, 1920. And that just from my collection of magazines. And so I started looking into what was going on, why they did this, and ended up doing some research on it, for where you were seeing these, and ideas about why it happened, and ideas about, they were starting to think that how you raise children was worthy of study, like at a university or something. And so a lot of this came out of what was good for health for children and so on. So that was what for a number of things. Anyway, so I went ahead and knitted the Baby Bunting snowsuit. So here's my top that I knitted for it. And they are these wonderful little vintage buttons. The yarn is wool, and it came from Hirschner's. I figured that was as close to what they would have been knitting with in 1920 as anything. And a friend of mine who collects vintage buttons, found these for me. So that's the sweater from the bunting thing.
You're not the first person I've heard say, oh, my friend has a collection of vintage buttons.
Yeah,
I'd like to have a friend who has a collection of vintage buttons.
Well,
Matthew Brown, are you listening? I interviewed this man in France who has a collection of vintage buttons, but he's a collector, not just like casual, oh, I snip buttons off of grandma's dresses.
Right. So here's the hat,
Mm.
part of the Baby Bunting thing, which I think is quite charming. And then here are the trousers, which actually have little feet, but they are like gaiters. See that? They're gaiters, so they go over the shoe.
Like a spat, almost.
Yeah, spat or gaiters. And there's a gusset. And when I was first, these old patterns, they don't, as you know, they don't always tell you exactly what to do. You're supposed to know what you're doing, So the gusset, like knit, one was to do a garter stitch square. And it took me a little while to figure out it's a gusset. It's a crotch gusset. So that's what that is. I made the little thing there, but it's got kind of amusing little, texture in it. And it's a nice pattern. It's a really nice pattern. So that story appeared in, oh gosh, this was a long time ago. Oh, this was in Knitting Traditions in this magazine from, 2011. Long time ago. This is what I did for amusement when I was a professor. It was like to save my sanity to be able to do this kind of thing. So there's an article about what I learned about why people may have been doing this to their children, and then the pattern as I rewrote it and from the original one. And the Hirschner's thing, I was living in Chicago, and so I drove to Wisconsin to the Hirschner's warehouse, which is now in Stevens Point. And so that worsted weight yarn, really consistent to what they would have used in the 1920s, similar to what you would have gotten through mail order from Hirschner's or some of the others, and an interesting history with Mr. Hirschner as well. So I thought you might enjoy seeing that as I was looking at the other things you were doing.
So did you actually find out why people were doing that to their kids?
Yeah, I had to reread my article here. Well, it had to do with health, beliefs about the health of children. And it was, they're coming off the Victorian era. So they were making clothes that were simpler for children. And in the 1920s, they got into something called the self-dress movement, where they thought that children should be able to dress themselves because it prepared them to be better participants in democracy, in a democratic country. Honestly, I have the little original publications about that. And then as far as the cold weather, they had, well, men had dress that was loose and serviceable and inconspicuous, and that the open air and getting outside in cold weather was appropriate, it was helpful for children. So it basically had to do with good health. But that is, you have to look at, home economics was a new profession at the time. So you had home economists studying how to dress your children, how to cook food, how to take care of things. And there are just health benefits of clothing. Also, the health benefits of wearing wool. Very important that children wear wool. I believe there were strong health benefits for that. And white clothing, particularly, there was a little bit of controversy about that. They had to keep joints covered, particularly with wool. That was important. So if they went outside, they particularly needed to do that. And of course, by 1920, as you well know, we had lots of knitters and people looking for things to knit. So there were lots of people to knit snowsuits, and they kind of peaked in popularity around the 1940s. And
I was going to say, my mother had a friend who was really very entertaining, and she told a story about a friend of hers who would dress her kids in these snowsuits, not a hand knit one, but you put it on over your clothes, and your winter clothes are already kind of bulky. So having this like tufted, voluminous thing, the leggings and then the jacket, the kids would stand there like at the front door, okay, mom, push me, because like they couldn't move. So yeah, they were warm, but they weren't going anywhere fast.
Yeah, I kind of concluded with this that I kind of wondered how many of the snowsuit I have here for my grandmother doesn't look like it was ever worn, frankly, although wool is hard wearing, it could have been, but it doesn't look like it was worn very much. And I kind of concluded that we just had all these knitters out there, and they wanted to knit little things for little people, and so they were knitting these things. So there are a lot of like portraits of babies wearing these snowsuits. Like here's one that was just from a friend. This cute little portrait. She had a baby portrait done, and she's wearing the snowsuit. And I thought, I think this was a bit of a, like you get a gift from someone and you be sure you wear it, whether you like it or not. And I think they may have knitted these things because it was something that they could make, and it was for a child, and it was a gift. And pictures like that where a baby's in a photo studio and posed wearing this snowsuit, clearly that is meant to kind of honor the garment that the child is wearing. And so
something you probably wouldn't knit for your own child because it might take too long.
Maybe
it's not going to get a lot of use.
Yeah.
The little sweater though is darling.
But it definitely went over the top of other clothes and other shoes, and were meant to go outside. But I think the idea of wool, the whole idea of wool being very healthy for children was important. And also keeping the joints warm was interesting. And again, this was the first time that the university system thought that topics of interest to women and the household were important enough to be worthy of university study. So
how cool.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, those people were radicals back then. They fought for this to establish,
I have a book that my parents bought on child rearing, so mid-century, and illustrations and so forth. I never referred to it in raising my own child, but I thought this was a book that is probably valuable and I should keep. Anyway, I haven't shown what I'm knitting. This year has just been a nightmare for me. I'm really glad to see it coming to a close. I have a couple of things that I'm having fit issues with, but I sort of navigated over to knitting a scarf. Can't really see it. It'll come and go here. But I'm getting a little bit bored with it because this herringbone stitch is so repetitive and there's yards of it. But I'm coming down the home stretch. And what I really wanted to show you was the tassels. There's 2 of these tassels. You know, I never did this before with this virtual backdrop. It's annoying, I'm sorry. But anyway, tassels. This is a Pearl Soho free pattern, and they tell you how to make the tassels. So, you know, I'm happy, something that doesn't have to fit. Because I just started a sweater. I haven't shown it yet on my podcast, that is with this. It's a white, fluffy mohair thing. I don't know if it's all mohair. I think it's a German yarn. It was given to me. So I thought, well, there's 8 skeins of it. I could do something with it. So I started to knit a little jacket, a little lace jacket. But I can see I'm halfway down the back and it looks like it's going to be too big. So I will probably be knitting the rest of it and then figuring out how much smaller I need to. It's like a never-ending thing. Does anybody else have problems with fit? I know, Katy, you're like the perfect size. I know everything. You just knit it according to the pattern and it comes out right first time, every time.
No, not really.
No?
No, not really, but often it actually does, yes. I have good luck, but I had also a very difficult project this year. It was a vest that was crocheted and it was way too big. And I use a sewing machine to get it.
Don't tell anyone. Who hasn't shared their beverage? I think Susan, you didn't show us what you're drinking.
Oh, I just have tea. I left it in the other room, actually.
All these tea drinkers.
Yeah, I left it in the other room.
Nighttime. Well, see, for her, it's earlier, but for those folks over in the UK, it's evening. Tea? Keep you awake. Anyway, I asked everybody to please bring or come prepared to talk about their favorite yarn that they knit with this year. So I'll kick it off by saying when I was in Shetland, I felt compelled to buy Shetland wool. But when I went into Jamieson and Smith and Jamieson's, I found that the Shetland wools, the really sticky ones for doing color work, were not something that I particularly wanted to knit a sweater with that was going to be in contact with the skin. And I really wasn't shopping for yarn for myself, but I thought of buying something for my son. And West Yorkshire Spinners makes this yarn, which I really enjoyed knitting with. I knit a beautiful cable sweater for my son. It's squishy. It's soft enough to be by the skin. I just saw today when I went to like refresh my memory about it, that it's superwash. And I didn't know that when I bought it, which in this case, it turns out to probably be a pretty good idea. Because when I sent my son the sweater, I sent him a small bottle of Eucaline. I sent him 2 sweaters that I knit, both this year. And now I'll be able to tell him, oh, this one you can actually put in the washing machine. I've never washed a sweater in the machine. So I'm a little afraid to tell him to do it, especially because if it accidentally gets into the dryer, I think that would be hard. But it is soft and squishy, and I love the color. It's kind of tweedy. So that would be my favorite of all the things I knit with this year. And I invite the rest of you to take, oh, whoops, I forgot I have this little swatch. So you can see like stretchy, oh, let me pin and then you'll get a bigger picture of me. So, reasonably good stitch definition. But mainly for me, the squish factor and the softness I liked. Anybody else want to volunteer their fave?
My favourite was the one that I knitted with the original Jaeger yarn. I did post something on my Instagram, that tweedy Jaeger yarn that I had. I found an actual Jaeger pattern. I think it must have been early 60s, little jacket, and I knitted a beret to go with it. And I knitted it all in my 2-week holiday from work. I set myself a challenge, but I wanted to try to knit something in 2 weeks. Obviously, because I work full time, it's really a challenge for me to knit something really quick. But to have 2 weeks off work. No, it wasn't actually. It was more like an Aran weight.
This is Aran also, so it knit up pretty quickly.
Yeah, but yeah, so I was quite pleased that I managed to knit. And the thing is, because it was the actual yarn that suited the pattern, I felt kind of comfortable that it was going to work out okay.
That's lovely. It's never happened to me that I had the yarn for the pattern.
Yeah,
but for the rest of us, it's really rare unless you have vintage.
But I've had the yarn for a couple of years, it's just been sitting around, and it's kind of, you have the yarn and you think, well, what do I do with this? What do I knit with it? So it was only through searching through my patterns. So I actually found, a cardigan that actually went with the yarn. So I thought, well, I might as well, I think it's destined to knit up in this yarn. So, and I had quite a lot of it, and even though I've knitted the cardigan and the beret, I've still got quite a bit of yarn left. So maybe I'll knit a little scarf or something to go with it.
Ellie, is your favorite yarn a Norwegian one or something else?
I think I just have the same old as usual, yeah. Like, I like pretty much everything that falls under the kind of umbrella of 2-ply worsted, spun, Norwegian wool. Like I'm working with one of them now. This is Busk by Hillesvåg, and that's a big favorite. I've worked with that a lot lately, and it's sort of one of those yarns that I always keep coming back to. It's quite similar to the my Fenil, which I also talk about quite a bit. I think there's a slightly tighter twist to this yarn, so it's a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker, and yeah, it's just one of those things that they're super versatile. Like it doesn't have to be worked with color work, though. I think if you're like unhappy with your color work, then like finding yarns like these, it's like very rewarding. And a lot of people say that suddenly now, like they're happy with the color work because it sort of just does something. I don't know what it is. But even other things, like I, would totally be happy to make a shawl with this yarn, like with very, very thick needles, or even just a plain stockinette jumpers, like pretty much anything except socks. This yarn is good for. So kind of always one of those things that I come back to. Yeah, it's just
any yarns that you didn't like working with this year? Any like disaster yarns? Because I have one.
I don't think so, but I think this year I've only knitted with kind of my comfort zone yarns for the most part. So,
okay,
yeah.
What you see is what you get. Okay, Katy.
I have brought along the yarn which I'm knitting now with. It's an old yarn. Don't know if you can see it. It's from Schmidt's Strumpfgarn. It's for socks. And it's nice. It's a bit scratchy, but it works well for the patterns I've used it for. I've knitted another Edwardian cardigan, and it worked really well with it. I didn't need to change anything. The stitches were just fine. So that was a successful yarn for me this year. And I'm really proud that I haven't bought any yarn this year. I've used up only my stash.
Yes. I think we should all like applaud that. Wow, that's very good. Very, very good. Well, I have no stash, so it's not an issue for me. I have to buy as I go. So I bought this when I was ready to start knitting this scarf. Jules?
Well, every summer there's a little wool festival in a little town called Zulingen, which is near where I live. And this is the wool that I bought at last year's festival, not the 2023, but the 2022 festival. A brand that I've never seen anywhere else. It's called Jundi und Grete. And this is a yarn that is 75% merino and 25% silk. So it's really soft, really nice, and it has just a little bit of shine to it. And I bought a lot of green and a little bit of this pink to make a twin set. This is the jumper is finished. So that is this.
Oh.
Which is really nice. And because I had so much wool, I wanted to make a twin set out of it, but there was no twin set pattern. There was only a pattern for this short sleeve jumper. So I'm designing the cardigan myself, which is why it's in pieces. Here's one sleeve, here's something, I don't know, some part of it. It's almost finished now, but the wool is really beautiful. It just turns out to be a very different size after blocking than while I was knitting. Even I made a swatch and I blocked the swatch, but still the finished piece came out so much bigger than it was supposed to, the jumper, that I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't want to take the sewing machine to it because it's this lace, so I didn't want to have a big seam on it. I'm not opposed to the sewing machine. I understand, Katy. I have used the sewing machine myself in other projects, but not this one. So I did the other thing you're not supposed to do, which is I put it in the clothes dryer and it shrank to exactly the perfect size. So I'm hoping the cardigan will turn out to be the perfect size when I knit it. But other than that, it's fantastic. It's fantastic wool because it's so soft and so silky, and it's warm enough, but also not too warm. It's a really nice all-weather yarn.
Speaking of the dryer, I think, Susan, it was when I interviewed you, I was wearing the lavender cloche, I think.
I don't remember.
Well, recently I was wearing it and I felt like it was a little bit stretched out. So I thought, okay, let me put it in scalding hot water and just like leave it on a towel and let it dry on its own and see if I can shrink it. Because I didn't want to shrink it a lot. I just wanted to shrink it a little bit. It was bigger after I did that. So I thought, okay, next time I did the laundry, I thought, well, I'll put it in the dryer. Now, I live in an apartment building, so I don't have my own washer and dryer, and I don't have the settings that people in Europe have. These are commercial machines. So I put it in and I let it spin around, tumble around for like 5 minutes, and I took it out to see how is it. And I had it in a mesh bag. It was still like very, very wet and big. So I kept putting it back in like 5 or 10 minute increments. Then I thought, oh, screw it. I'll just leave it in there for the rest of the time, which was like another 20 minutes because it wasn't going anywhere fast. The whole cycle completed, I think 45 minutes on high. It still wasn't dry for starters, and it certainly did not shrink. So I'm at my wit's end with this thing. I might have to run a little elastic. It got kind of back to where it was. I would like it to be a little bit tighter, and I really don't want to have to re-knit the thing. It's got like petals on the side. Anyway, little nightmare. So my yarn disaster for this year. In 2022 at Rhinebeck, I saw this beautiful chenille, and it's very thin. It's like maybe like fingering weight chenille, not the chunky stuff that you see in the big box stores. And I just loved the color, like the sort of violety color. And I thought, oh, this is like my dream yarn. It's so like luxurious looking. And I thought, oh, it's going to be like so beautiful near my face, near my skin. Has anybody else knit with chenille?
No.
Don't. Susan, you have?
No, I just a stitchers group that I'm in, somebody bought a big cone of yarn very similar to what you have and tried to recruit people to knit squares and make it into a blanket. And I kept telling them that yarn does not want to be knitted. That yarn wants to be woven. And they didn't listen to me. And then they came back and said, this is awful, knitting with this. And well,
It could have been this, because I think these people, it's sort of like a no-name artisanal yarns, and they told us they buy it in big cones and then they wind off like smaller quantities, and they were selling it very inexpensively. And I thought, oh, what a deal. I bought all that they had. It's probably the same stuff if it was thin like this. So it does something called worming. So I don't have a sample swatch to show you, but you knit and then suddenly you blink and a loop projects into the third dimension. And they're random. It's all over. Like you never know when it's going to like worm out. So I kept trying like bigger needles, really big. Then I went to like smaller and smaller. I thought, you know, maybe there's like just some perfect needle size. It's going to be just the right thing. I'm somebody who will not back down from anything. I finally put it aside and said, I don't think this is happening. And I think you're probably right. It doesn't want to be knit. I did get it to be pretty good if I went to really tight on a really small needle, but it was hard on my hands to keep like going like tight, every stitch, like pulling it. And then I wouldn't have enough to even make like a collar and cuffs for something, but this was my nightmare yarn of the year and a project not realized. So I've had a lot of those, but it's just been a bad year in a lot of other ways. I certainly don't want to end this chat on that happy note. What else does anybody have to share? Oh, Susan. Yes, I forgot you because I wasn't sure that you were knitting and I didn't want to...
This is what I was doing before I got out the quilt pieces. And I'm with you on not having a stash. That has been aspirational for me. I absolutely agree with that. So I've been doing stash knitting all through the pandemic, and this was some of the last of it. And this is, if you recognize it, it is Shetland wool. And I had a whole bag of these, this is colors, I think Spindrift or something, that I did get at Jameson's. And I just chose colors that were the colors of the landscape that day. And I just thought they were beautiful. And I put it into my Buttons for Buttons tote bag from Huddersfield, if anybody's been there, which is pretty fun. And there it sat for, I don't know, when was I last there? I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that. I was over there for something or other and then came back home through England. And anyway, so that was the last. I thought I was done. And then I remembered my Buttons for Buttons bag, and there it was, all this stuff. So I started knitting hats. So I've given away most of them because that really makes good hats in our climate. So just, you know, variety of patterns. And then like with this, I was kind of running out of, you know, kind of to the end of the colors, but it has kind of a nice vintagey look to it. I think the colors looks a little, you know, 40s or something. And then, and then I tried it with just 2 colors, and then I made several others that did, but then there was still a whole lot left, but only all these mishmash of colors. So I started knitting a, I guess you'd call it a small throw. And I might have to back up. I'm just using the, maybe this was my transition to quilting. This was the log cabin style, where you start with the square and then I could just knit. And that was my way of not wasting any of the yarn, because I could just knit until I ran out of that particular color. And all the colors go together beautifully. I'll just step back a little bit so you can see that. So it's all coming back. Anyway, it's kind of like that. And then you know, picking up and knitting along it, and the colors all go together beautifully. And I must say that this yarn, this is a perfect use for this yarn, is to it's light. It has a wonderful loft to it. It's lightweight and yet it's very warm. And it was I think I knitted on, not sure what this is, pretty small needles.
Which yarn is it?
It's the Shetland spindrift that I
Oh,
bought at
Spindrift. Ah.
Jameson's. And again, I didn't have anything in mind. I was just grabbing colors off of their wall, the one behind the curtain, and just colors that I liked, and threw them in the bag and brought them home, and there they sat until it was my last stash project. And I'm so happy with this. And I decided I would do an attached chain binding around it, knitted attached chain. And so I think I want to do it. I don't know. I'm just not quite sure. There's a yarn shop near here that sells this yarn and has every color in the book. So I have to go over to that yarn shop and decide what color to do my binding. And I was going to do it in this dark charcoal, which I absolutely love. But one of the panels, the last ones, is in that color. So I don't think it'd be very good to do it in the same color. So I have to choose some other color that will look good with all the edge pieces. But I'm really happy with this as just a simple solution to wanting to knit up odds and ends of stash.
So for 2024, I'm curious if people have a specific plan or a specific goal. And before I turn the floor over to you, I just wanted to say, I heard another podcaster say that she has an awful lot of whips. She didn't realize just how many works in progress she actually had until she started pulling them out. And a lot of them weren't sweaters, they weren't fit issues. I don't know about you, but I tend to put stuff aside when I get to a place where I see the fit is not going to work. And I get frustrated, and it's hard to come back to it, especially when you know you're going to have to rip it out and maybe start over. So a lot of her things were like, oh, it needed a button band and the buttons, or it was a shawl that she was partway through. So the things seemed really, really doable. And it wasn't her goal for 2024. Like, she wasn't trying to get all these things done before the end of the year. But I thought it was really, really interesting that she said she wants to enter 2025 with clean needles. And I thought, what a great idea. If you just spend the whole year pulling out all your unfinished projects and finishing everything, and then you're like clean slate, clean needles. I thought it sounded really good. I think I might try and do that. Anybody else have any thoughts about what they're gonna
I actually used to do that until I started the podcast. So every year, every New Year's, I'd have no projects left. But then as I started the podcast, that's just impossible, because you just keep having projects and you just want to show off things, to start a new thing to show off, and then you start designing, you know.
Ellie, that's why I sometimes interview other people. It gives me a little time to like not be under pressure to like new.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's pressure. It's just like, I don't know, there's a drive or something.
Drive. Yeah, it's really easy to start new things. It's lovely to cast on. There's no greater fix in our habit than to cast on. I don't think. I mean, I find it much more exciting to cast on than maybe to frog or even to bind off. I think casting on, it's like, oh, there's such a magic about it. New yarn, new color, maybe a needle size you haven't worked with recently. I mean, there's a lot of like new with it. So it's kind of addictive. And I see that there are people out there who are like casting on, like they have cast on itis and they don't finish anything. Like, I don't see the joy in that, although I'm becoming a little guilty. I mean, I find like I'm sort of getting, you know, Katy and I have talked about this in years past, about she starts something and she stays on it until she's done because She wants to be able to wear that garment. And that's great if you have the perfect figure and the perfect size for that pattern, and it always works out perfectly for you. That is not at all the case for me. It's almost never the case, actually. But just about everything I knit that's a garment has some part of it that needs some adjusting, some reknitting. I don't like the fit. I want to, redo the arm or whatever, the arm side or, something. So, yeah, what am I trying to say? It's kind of a pipe dream for me to do it the Katy way, although I would love to be monogamous. I think it's very admirable, but I do find, and I'm finding more and more, like I'm giving myself permission to have a few things on the needles, because if I get frustrated with one, I can put it aside and pick up the other and still be productive. Like this thing that I'm working on, even though it's kind of big, it's almost, it's 4 skeins. It's almost like the amount of yarn that would go into a sweater. So it's not something like a hat or a pair of socks you just throw in your bag and take on the fly. But this is my project like that. This is, instead of socks or hat, because I don't generally do those. This is the thing that I take with me because I've memorized the stitch. I know how to do it. I've done it already a million times. Whereas the lace jacket that I'm knitting, I really have to keep referring 20 row repeat. Each of the lines is different. I have to keep looking.
Yeah, I find that with lace. I've got a lace project that I kind of put down and I haven't picked up for a few weeks, because even though I think it's only an 8-row lace pattern, I have to concentrate. It's not something I could do on the train or in my lunch hour. I've literally got to concentrate on it. I've knitted the front and the back and I'm on the first sleeve, but I'm still, put it aside and I'm doing something a bit more simpler.
That's why I think at least 2 projects really make sense for me, but of course I have more than 2. I have a couple of scarves going and a couple of scarves that have fit issues. But I'm going to start out by saying by the end of 2024, I hope to have all of those things accomplished. Maybe you'll hold me accountable when we meet again next year, same time, same place. I think this is a good place to wrap it up, unless anybody else has anything like, burning that they want to share. Maybe if you have like a quick goal for 2024.
Well, I want to knit lots of feral berets. I'm really into berets at the moment. I knitted my first feral beret to go with a vest that I knitted. I knitted one for a friend for Christmas, and I'm now going to knit another one for me in like red, white and blue, like really nice bright colours. So yeah, I want to knit quite a few berets because I just love knitting like with circular needles with like ferrule. I just love ferrule, but a ferrule jumper takes too long. So I'm finding if you knit a beret, it doesn't take so long, does it? So I'll get loads of berets to wear, especially like in the winter time. So yeah, that's what I'm into at the moment. Ferrule berets.
Anybody else have any 2024 aspirations?
Well, just my quilt.
That's a big one. To be finished by the end of 2024?
Yeah, here on Bainbridge Island, there's quite a nice outdoor quilt show. And I've had something in it, my potholder quilts, like I have behind me. I've had 2 of those, and I intend to finish a 3rd one. And I would love to have this with its story in that show. That would be in September.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the right term. So I'd love to do that, but without a deadline, nothing gets done for me. So.
Well, now you have us, like Weight Watchers. You can be accountable to us.
Oh.
We'll check in with you in a month and see how you're progressing.
Okay.
Going once, going twice. Okay.
I'll just leave you with the wise saying from my yogi tea bag. Freundschaft ist ein Geschenk, das bleibt. Friendship is a gift that stays with you.
Oh, come give me a big hug. I love it. Oh, that's the perfect
Lovely.
ending. My friends, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you,
Thank
Billie.
you for inviting.
Everybody have healthy, happy holidays. I know it seems so far away, the New Year still, but I'm gonna say have a happy New Year. I'll see you next year.
Yeah, happy St. Stephen's Day as well.
Okay. Do they celebrate that in America? I don't know.
In the UK, some people do. We do.
AKA Boxing Day.
It's known as Boxing Day here. But we know it's St. Stephen's Day now, so that's our celebration day.
All right. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.